jantamanupeta krityam dvaipayana virahakatara juhava putreti tan mayatayo taravo binedus tam sarva bhuta hridayam munimanatosmi. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyade Shatarine Vanchakalpatarubhescha Kripa Sindhubhe Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Ajanuvambita bhujokna kavadata sankirtanai kapitaro kamalai taksha Vishwambaro dvijavaro yugadharma palo Vande jagat priyakaro karunavataro Yantah pravishya mama vachimamam prasuptam sanjivayata kila shakti daraksvadamna Anyam shahasta charana shravanat vagadim Pranannamo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Samsara Dukha Jalado Patitasya Kama Krodadina Kramakaraya Kavali Kritasya Durvasanam Nigaditasya Nirashrayasya Chaitanya Chandram Mamadehi Kripavalamba. Hare Krishna. So we're reading the 29th chapter of the third canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, explanation of devotional service, where our Lord Kapila Dev gives a very practical guidelines of how to perform devotional service or bhakti so that it ultimately will bring us to the highest possible platform. The pure devotional service, which is ahaituki and avyavahita, which is totally causeless and does not have any impediments or totally uninterrupted. This flow of devotional service is being produced by certain practices which constitute Bhagavad Dharma, as we learned yesterday, and we studied 14 different items of sadhanas or Bhagavad Dharmas, which ultimately will develop the consciousness of the living entity. At this moment, our consciousness is covered by kama. Kama, or lust, is a thick covering over the consciousness. Kama esha krodha esha rajaguna samudbhava. So this jnana or consciousness, avritam, is being covered by this kama or selfish desire. Desire to enjoy independently. And that basically ignorance. Because of this ignorance, which is tantamount or synonymous to kama or selfish desire or lust, we don't have love, and the love is being exchanged into the envy. And Srimad-Bhagavatam is teaching us how to develop love. And ultimately all these items which are listed in this chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which we read yesterday, is the aids or hints or practices how to develop love and how to get rid of envy. But at the same time, even though the pure devotional service is on the platform of avichinna, it doesn't have any interruption, or avyavahita, there is one vyavahit. Vyavahit means blockage, something which blocks the power of devotional service, and that blockage which basically eliminates the power of devotional service or diminishes the power of practices of devotional service is offenses. And therefore, after explaining the practices which we should do, or the sadhanas, Kapila Dev starts explaining to us the danger of offenses and how to counteract offenses, how to avoid offenses, and what we should do to counteract offenses. Because we do have envious nature. This envy is very deeply rooted, and we have to do something to uproot this envy, otherwise the love will be stunted or will not develop properly. And we started yesterday learning this or studying this section, which starts from the verse 21 and goes on for quite some time, because up to the verse number 35, this is all basically the same topic. And the main point of this topic is that to counteract this envy which is there within our heart, we have to educate ourselves to see that the Lord is present in every living entity. We more or less have to force ourselves to see this. We have to know it theoretically, and then we have to apply it in practice, or train our eyes to see the Lord in every living entity. Otherwise, the avagya, or contempt, haughtiness towards other living entities, pride, is practically inevitable. This is being explained by Srila Jiva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha. Tan mama avagyaya tesam avagyaya. Tat adhisthana kasya mamaeva avagyam kritveti artha. So basically what he says, that to avoid avagya, we have to see that every living entity is adhishtan, or the sitting place of the Lord. It's common practice in human society that the sitting place is being respected as the representative of somebody who sits on this. Like, for example, the king sits on throne. And if you kick the throne, it's a very, rude disrespect towards the king. The throne is being respected on the same level as you respect the king. In Russia, when there was this revolution, when all the navies invaded the palace of Russian king, the first thing which they did, of course the king was not there, but the first thing which they did, they sat on his throne. Just to show who is the man here. So, and basically that's what Srila Jiva Goswami explains. Tadadishtan. You have to look at other living entities as the sitting place of the Lord. and deal with them accordingly. Like, for example, if we sit in a car and somebody comes to the car and kicks the car, we will be very offended, right? Why are you kicking me? It's not me, but it's my sitting place. But that's the point which we have to understand. Ultimately, the sitting place has something to do with somebody who sits inside. And therefore, we have to educate ourselves to see every living entity as the sitting place of the Supreme Lord. And later we will study this. Srila Jiva Goswami gives a very interesting twist to the whole idea, and he explains the effect of this behavior. But anyway, let's go verse by verse. We read yesterday the verse 21, which is avagya. It's also very important in this verse. Let's read it again. Aham sarveshu bhuteshu bhutatma vastitah sada tadavagya martya kurute archa vidambanam. So Lord Kapila Dev says that I am sitting in everyone's, in every living entity, aham sarveshu bhuteshu, bhutatma avastita. I am atma, or paramatma in every living entity, sada, constantly, tamavagya mam martyah. He says, if any martya or mortal human being, it's very important. Please make note of it. He calls here human being as martya or fallible being, fallible entity. And he says, if this martya or mortal living entity, living being, develops disrespect or avagya, some neglect to other living entity or haughtiness towards other living entity, then kuruta archa vidambanam, then his worship of archa becomes pretense, becomes hypocritical. It's not really worship. So why does he say martya? Why does he say mortal living entity?
Because everyone dies.
Because everyone dies and because everyone has this avagya towards others. And as we said yesterday, this is the lowest and most innocent manifestation of our offensive nature. We're all offensive. But offensiveness grows as much as cancer has 4 stages, right? The first stage, second stage, third stage, and fourth stage. So offensiveness also has 4 stages, according to Lord Kapila Dev. And the first stage, martya, it makes you mortal. It more or less fixes you in this mortal plane of existence. So it's bad enough, but still it's quite innocent because, everyone is equal in this regard. It's not so bad. So the next, we discussed in detail yesterday this verse, so let's read the next verse. Yomam sarveshu bhuteshu santamatmanam ishvaram hitvarcham bhajate modhyat basmanyeva juhoti saham. One who worships the deity of Godhead in the temples but does not know that the Supreme Lord as Paramatma is situated in every living entity's heart, must be in ignorance and is compared to one who offers oblations into ashes. So here the quality of somebody who manifests the next stage, second stage of offensiveness, is called modhyat. Modhyat means he's a fool, very ignorant person, very dull person, modhyat. So one is martya, which is okay, which is not so bad. If your ignorance becomes even more pronounced, if you're more covered, if your consciousness is more covered by the mode of ignorance, you become fool. And becoming fool, the next stage is upeksa. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he indicates that these 4 stages of offensiveness is avagya, upeksa, next dvesa, and next is ninda or avamaninah, criticism. Dvesa means hatred. So first is avagya, some sort of neglect. Upeksa, it's also neglect, therefore in this book they're grouped together, but in reality it's the next stage of ignorance, and it's basically when you ignore other people, when you become so egoistic and so self-centered that basically you can care less about other people. You only exploit other people. You only see when you need to see them, when you need something from them. Otherwise, you just ignore them. You don't really care about other people at all. And that's a higher stage of offensiveness. Therefore, it's called here modhyat. Modhya means, as I said, fool. So, Kapila Dev says, if somebody manifests this sort of attitude towards other living entity, if he's really openly neglectful, or ignoring other living entities as if they don't exist. Sometimes we know somebody whom we know goes through us or sees through us, doesn't see us. And we feel very offended because we feel as if we don't exist. And in reality, it's like this. He looks at us and he doesn't see us. Because he's so self-centered. It's very offensive sort of attitude. Why in a civilized human society, when we see somebody, we have to at least nod the head, at least nod, or at least, say hello, or say something, or Hare Krishna, or Hare Bol, or whatever. And better, of course, is to offer the full respect, but at least we have to recognize that he exists. So this second stage of offensiveness is when we don't recognize that somebody else exists. And we only use him as if he is a non-living entity, as if he is somebody, just one object, not subject. And Lord says that in this case, in the first case, his worship is pretense. In the second case, his worship is completely useless. What it really means, it means that such a person will worship the Lord. He will not get any result from his worship of the Lord, because the Lord says, How he relates to me, I relate to him. He doesn't see me existing in every living entity, so I don't see him. He doesn't exist for me because nobody else exists for him. I don't exist for him, so he doesn't exist for me. Therefore, the Lord does not reciprocate with his worship whatsoever. And what happens as a result of it, the person loses faith in worship. Because he doesn't get any reciprocation from the Lord. He doesn't get any result. He worships, and then nothing happens. There was a joke which I read about if you were in Jerusalem, there is this wall of the temple which was destroyed, the second temple which was destroyed, and Orthodox Jews, they come to this wall and they pray the whole day long. They sit there. If you go to this wall, you see the row of Jews who just go like this, and they pray and pray and pray and pray, for hours and hours and hours, because this is something which is very sacred. So one Jew lived to 120 years, and he was worshipping the Lord by this wall, for 100 plus years. Every day he was worshipping, doing like this. And ultimately, he was interviewed. A journalist came to him and said, how do you feel, by worshipping the Lord for so long, sitting by this wall? He said, yeah, I feel like sitting by the wall. The same reciprocation is there, as if I'm just sitting by the wall. So that's exactly what Lord Kapila says here. If somebody develops this attitude or this stage of offensiveness, the Lord neglects him because he is neglectful. He does not want to recognize that the Lord is existing in everyone's heart, and therefore he doesn't get any reciprocation, and therefore ultimately he loses his faith. This is what Srila Jiva Goswami explains when he explains how the offensiveness or offenses affect our consciousness. He says, first is kautilya, first result is kautilya, second result is asraddha. Asraddha means you don't believe in Lord, even if you see the Lord, even if you see some extraordinary manifestation of supernatural powers of the Lord, manifested by the Lord himself or by other devotees, you will not develop faith. And he gives the example of Duryodhana. Krishna showed his universal form to Duryodhana, and Duryodhana said, hey, yeah, some mystic yogi, whatever. No problem for him. So that's asraddha. And you become dull. You're dull from the beginning, you become even more dull as a result of it. So that's the second stage of offensiveness and the second stage of neglect, and therefore Lord Kapila uses the different words for such a person and different descriptions of his behavior. Srila Prabhupada doesn't make very clear distinction in his purports, and I was thinking why he does not specify this. But basically what Srila Prabhupada does in all these purports, he stresses very much the distribution of prasadam, the mercy towards other living entity. Probably because he knows that we are very grossly offensive, all of us. And we have to do something by manifesting some mercy. This fine distinction which are there is important for us to understand, to avoid offensiveness, but ultimately we have to avoid it altogether, in all four stages. So anyway, that was the second stage of offensiveness. The third stage of offensiveness is described in the next verse, verse number 23, which is dvesa. And therefore, this verse starts with the word dvishatah, hateful, very envious person, hateful person. Dvishatah parakayamam, the one who is hating me in other bodies. Mam parakai, in the bodies of other people. Manino bhinnadarshinaha, bhuteshu badhavairasyam, namanach santim richati. So this dveshi, or hateful person, is described in this verse by two synonyms. Bhinnadarshinaha. Bhinnadarshinaha, as we know, is somebody who sees the differences between living entities, or who is devoid of mercy, who does not really understand the what happened? Who does not really understand the feelings of other people, who is so dull that he becomes completely senseless, very cruel person. Therefore, he is Therefore, he is bhinnadarsi. He is called bhinnadarsi. And just one second, I just wanted to find something. Okay. Anyway, no, it's not here. Okay. And the second point, which is the second synonym to this person, which is here, Badha Vairasya. Srila Jiva Goswami, Badha Vairasya means one who is inimical. He has this, he is actually bound by his enmity toward other living entities. He cannot do anything. He just looks at others and he feels enmity. His ignorance is so thick and so pronounced. So Srila Jiva Goswami gives different, very interesting explanation of this bhinnadarshinaha. He says bhinnadarshinaha literally means the one who sees every living entity differently from himself. He says bhinnadarshinaha means the somebody who doesn't see the context, or somebody who doesn't see the unity between the living entities, that we are all connected. He doesn't understand that we ultimately are one big unified system. And it's not that all the units of this system are separate. We're all connected with each other. He doesn't see the context. He doesn't understand this sambandha gyan. Sambandha gyan means the context, the broader context of the existence. So this is bhinnadarshinaha, the selfish person who just wants to separate himself, and it's fine if I'm fine, everything else, let it go to hell. That's basically the attitude. And Lord Kapila gives the result. What happens as a result of such an attitude? Namanah shantim richati. Such a person never has peace in his mind. He always lives in this inimical environment. And if you live in a very inimical environment, can you be peaceful? Because you see enemies everywhere. You develop this enmity. This enmity is inside you, but because it's inside you, you project this enmity outside, and you see everyone as enemies, and everyone becomes inimical to you because the reciprocation works, and you live in this very hostile environment. And can you be peaceful in a hostile environment? You will never be peaceful in a hostile environment. So naturally, this result comes. This person becomes very disturbed all the time. I personally know such people, unfortunately. When they explain to me, they happen to be my disciples. When they explain to me their vision of the world, it's really amazing. They see this is enemy, this is enemy, everyone is enemy, and they're always disturbed because they see so many enemies, and everyone is inimical to them. So this is what happens. This is the result. So Lord Kapila Dev, he basically begs us, don't do it. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Lord Kapila Dev, he pronounces these verses in very angry mood. Angry mood. He says, his worship is useless, and he doesn't have any peace, and this and that. Just to impress upon us. This is a loving anger towards the devotees. He's just basically warning us, please don't do it, please don't do it. Don't do this foolishness. So this is the third degree of this disease of envy, or this cancer of offensiveness, which ultimately is a mortal disease, very dangerous disease. And Srila Prabhupada, in the purport to this verse, he says that we should distribute prasadam to everyone, even to the dogs. And he quotes the story about the dog of Shivananda Sen, how he was liberated by Shivananda Sen and ultimately Lord Chaitanya. So he says we have to be merciful to everyone. And he says that jiva himsa is the most dangerous attitude which we may have. We have to be really merciful towards other living entity. And then the verse number 24. Ahamucha vachair dravyah kriyato pannayag naghe naiva tushyer chitor chayam bhutagram avamaninah. So this is the fourth stage, and you may wonder what can be more offensive or more dangerous than this hateful attitude towards other living entities. But there could be something more. And this is more offensive attitude is designated here is avamaninah, of somebody who is very critical. You may keep your offensiveness inside yourself without manifesting it, and this is still not so bad. You may be hateful, but other living entities, living beings, other human beings may not even notice that you are so hateful. But when the degree of this offensiveness reaches certain level, then you cannot keep it inside. You have to blurt it out. You have to say it. He's bad, and this is bad, and this is bad. And now, of course, in the internet era, we have so much facilities for criticism. Everyone is becoming more and more progressively more and more critical. And it's amazing how this impersonal media of internet more or less evokes this attitude, pushes people to become more and more offensive, outwardly offensive by critical words. And Lord Kapila Dev here says, my dear mother, he says, Anaghe, oh, my sinless mother, he basically addresses his mother in this verse, saying that this is the greatest form of the sin the human being can perform, when he openly and hatefully criticizes others, when he employs his hatred by using very cruel words. He says this is the greatest manifestation of the sin. The commentators of this verse, they all say, they all quote the verse from 11th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, where Lord Krishna himself says that you may hurt somebody, but this is not so bad. But if you use hateful words against somebody, then this is much more painful, because when you physically hurt somebody, then the wound will heal after a couple of days, 3 days, 1 month. But you may remember the hateful words of somebody after 10 or 20 years, especially if this somebody is your wife or your husband, you know, and they always have some nice words to say to you. So this is what Lord Krishna himself says when these words are addressed to the most sensitive points of your mind, marmas of your mind, and they hurt you, then it's much more painful, and therefore it's a greater extent of violence. And because it's greater extent of violence, it's a greater extent of offense. It's a greater offense. And therefore Lord Kapila Dev says, my dear mother, even if he worships with proper rituals and paraphernalia, a person who is ignorant of my presence in all living entities never pleases me by the worship of my deities in the temple. Basically, what Lord Krishna says here, Lord Kapila Dev says here, such a person displeases me. All these critics, you know, there is a beautiful publication called Back to Prabhupada. Beautiful publication. If you want to know what Lord Kapila means in this verse, you just read this magazine. Just offenses after offenses after offenses, pointing out faults of different devotees, whether they exist or don't exist, doesn't matter. Back to Prabhupada. How is it back to Prabhupada? I don't know. But unfortunately, it's a fact. So here Lord Kapila Dev says, na eva tusye, I am not satisfied. I will never be satisfied with such a person. I cannot be satisfied. I am displeased with such an attitude if they do this sort of offenses. And we should be, at least we should keep our hatred inside. The very least. Not to let it out in the form of the words. So that's the result. The displeasure of the Lord is the result of such an attitude, and this is the most dangerous thing which we ever can do. And the example of it is in Mahabharata. The whole Mahabharata war was because of what? Because of just a few words of Draupadi. Draupadi said, oh, look at this fool, you know. He's blind. So that was enough. This whole drama was developed because of this just a few words of Draupadi. How dangerous it is. So we have to be very careful. And better just to be quiet or speak about Krishna. That's the best use. So that's the warning which Kapila Dev says. And in the next verse, he gives the solution. And of course, Prabhupada again says, prasadam, 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 because Kapila Dev will say about prasadam in the upcoming verses, in the verse 26 specifically. But Srila Prabhupada speaks about prasadam in all these verses. Just instead of being hateful, just invite people and give them prasadam. And Prabhupada, he actually makes a very good point here in the verse 24. This gratitude and love for God is exhibited by a pure devotee who knows that the Lord lives in every living entity. You can only really exhibit gratitude and humility, actually. One very important point about these verses is that if you know that the Lord exists in everyone's heart, then only you can be humble, truly humble. Humility is not possible otherwise. Only if you understand that the Lord, that everyone is the representative of the Lord. That He is the Lord, and He is the Lord, and He is the Lord. Only after that you can be humble. Otherwise you will never be humble. You will always look down on other living entities or manifest your offensiveness in some other way. Therefore, Prabhupada says, this gratitude and love or humility for God is exhibited by a pure devotee who knows that the Lord lives in every living entity. As such, listen, this is very important. As such, temple worship necessarily includes distribution of prasada. It is not that one should create a temple in his private apartment or private room, offer something to the Lord, and then eat. Of course, that is better than simply cooking foodstuff and eating without understanding one's relationship with the Supreme Lord. People who act in this manner are just like animals. But the devotee who wants to elevate himself to higher level of understanding must know that the Lord is present in every living entity, and as stated in the previous verse, one should be compassionate to other living entities. A devotee should worship the Supreme Lord, be friendly to persons who are on the same level, and be compassionate to the ignorant. Prabhupada, amazingly, he says something which Lord Kapila Dev will say later in this purport. One should exhibit his compassion for ignorant living entities by distributing prasada. Distributing of prasada for the living ignorant masses of people is essential for persons who make offerings to the personality of Godhead. This is a very important point of the whole Vedic culture, to give prasadam. Every sacrifice is not complete without distribution of prasadam. Prabhupada says, if you do program, give prasadam. You may talk about Krishna, it's not complete. By the way, our program is not complete because we are not distributing prasadam. The sacrifice of Krishna Katha becomes complete only after distributing prasadam, otherwise it's dry. You know, you have to take prasadam after Krishna Katha. You suffered so long, you have to take. Anyway, this is an important item, an essential point of Vedic culture. You have to feed everyone. Atithi Bhagavan, householders have to feed other people. You have to invite everyone and feed other people. And Lord Kapila Dev will say this in next verses, what we should do. And Srila Prabhupada is explaining here. And why it is so important. This is also important to understand why feeding others is so important. What do you think? Why it is so important? Yeah, it's a compassion. It's almost what I wanted to say. The love and food is very closely connected in our mind, because our first encounter with mother's love is in the form of the food which she gives. What is the milk of mother? it's the physical manifestation of her love. It's nothing else. It's liquid love of the mother. So, and therefore, when we exchange food, when we give somebody food, it's the best way to manifest our love. We can say, you know, I love you, I love you, I love you. But if you don't feed somebody, it's not love. You know, if you love me, give me some pizza. And this is how it is connected. Psychologically, it's very much connected in our mind. The food and love is inseparable. And therefore, if we want to develop love, what we should do, we should feed. And we want to develop love for God, we should feed everyone, because everyone is a representative. He is the adhisthana of God. And therefore Prabhupada says prasadam, 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 and all these things as the remedy to this hateful attitude or offensive attitude which we may have. Yes?
Is keeping hatred within, hatred within, also it's not good.
Of course. Even to look down on other living entities is not good. Hatred inside is not good, it's very bad. It's the third stage of disease, but you can do something worse. So that's the only point. I don't want to say it's good, but it's better than just speaking it out, spitting it out. Spitting out the poisonous hatred which you manifest. But we have to get rid of all of this. Even the slightest avagya. What is avagya? When we say guror avagya, which is the third offense. Third offense, yeah. Basically, when we see Guru as a mortal, ordinary living entity, right? And avagya means basically when you see as everyone as a faulty, dirty living entity, instead of trying to see his connection with the Supreme Lord. So that's avagya. Even avagya is bad. Avagya is very bad, but you know, progressively you can go further and further and further and become more and more offensive with more and more detrimental results to the extent that you will displease the Lord by your worship. You will worship the Lord, but the result will be totally opposite. You will displease. Better you don't worship Him if you're so offensive. So that's what Lord Kapila Dev says. Of course, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he makes a very, how shall we say it, very hope-producing point. He said that the Lord himself, he has the right to say it, but when rishis, when the wise people warn against this, they say it in a more mild way. They say if somebody is worshipping the deity but doesn't respect other devotees, he is a prakrita bhakta, which means bhakta in making. He's immature bhakta. So some utility is there in doing this, but Lord Kapila Dev wants to stress this point. Please do understand. So what are we supposed to do if we don't understand that the Lord is present in every living entity? Should we stop worshipping the Lord? No. So this is what Kapila Dev is explaining in the next verse.
One more question.
Yes.
Like just you mentioned that when someone feels that this person's enemy feels towards me, so he perceives everyone is enemies, right? Because he's enemy and
Yes.
he perceived like that.
Yes.
So on the other hand, first canto, I don't remember the exact Prabhupada, but Prabhupada writes that in material world everyone is envious of everyone. So how to understand that?
Yeah, because as I said, we all have envious nature. The matsarya is the deepest manifestation of calm, of desire to enjoy independently. It's there, and therefore we should do something about it. We should not just, say, yes, I am envious, everyone is envious, what's the problem with it? It's a problem, it's a big problem. Paramo nirmatsaranam satam, we will only be able to understand God on the pages of Srimad-Bhagavatam if we are nirmatsaranam. So it's a problem, and therefore Lord Kapila Dev says it's a big problem, it's a cancerous disease. And, as the cancer grows, has the tendency to grow, in the same way, the envious nature, if it's not curbed, it also grows inside us.
So, how to function in such an environment?
How to function in such environment? Well, you deal with others nicely, and they will also not manifest their envious nature with you. That's simple. You be nice to them. You be kind to them. It's, if somebody is not hopelessly, hateful, he will manifest some sort of goodwill towards you. Yes.
But it is also said in Shastras that those who are envious of you, you should simply neglect them, ignore them.
Yeah. But that's a different kind of neglect. There is a neglect, and actually the same word is used, upeksa. Upeksa is neglect. Upeksa is for the second verse, the verse number 22. But there are two types of upeksa. Upeksa, which we described, is when you don't recognize the existence of other living entity. If you don't see other living entities. Upeksa, which is recommended in the 11th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Kripa, Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Upeksa, is a different kind of upeksa. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that this upeksa is the manifestation of love. You avoid somebody or ignore somebody. Why you're ignoring somebody? Because you know if you get entangled with an envious person, he will become even more envious. The nature of envious people, when they see the devotees, they become even more envious. Their envy grows when they encounter devotees. And therefore, neglect is recommended as the way to manifest mercy towards them, not to, so that's a different kind of. But evasion is different. I don't want them to become even more angry. Sometimes you see somebody, he's very angry, and you know that to pacify his anger, you just have to ignore him, not to react in any way. So that's different. Yeah.
It was said that if you worship Krishna but you don't offer respect to other living beings, is Krishna actually saying that he's not going to accept your worship?
Yes, that's what he said.
But in another place, Krishna says if somebody behaves like that, they're not very intelligent. And Krishna says, but I'm not stupid, I'm not unintelligent, I'm very intelligent, and I will help that person.
No, it's a different.
He will help them.
Thank you. It's a different point. The verse from the 5th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which you mean, is about a person who worships the Lord, and it's not about the offensive nature. Here, Lord Kapila Dev is specifically dealing with the offenses which one may manifest. There, one worships the Lord with ulterior motives. He worships the Lord with the intention to get something from the Lord. He worships him, it's Rajasic attitude. He worships the Lord, but he doesn't want the Lord, he wants something from the Lord. And the Lord says, yes, he is a fool, and sometimes I don't give him what he wants, but give him the pure devotion. That's possible. But here we're dealing specifically with the offensive, with the offenses, with the offensive nature. If somebody is offensive, the Lord will not behave like this. If somebody is offensive, the Lord says here, I am displeased with such a person.
Then the examples of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda seem to contradict that again.
Yeah, but Lord Chaitanya is exceptional manifestation of the Lord. He is not just an ordinary manifestation of the Lord. Yeah, he also says. Well, of course, Lord Nityananda is different, but Lord Chaitanya wanted to chop off the head of Madai. Okay, let's read the verse number 25. Archada farchayet tavad Ishvaram mam svakarma krit Yavanna veda svahridi Sarvabhuteshvavastitam. So that's the solution. Actually, this and the next verse gives the solution. Although in the next verse, the Lord again becomes angry. His anger is not pacified. But here he gives solution. He says, Archadav, archayet tavad. One has to archayet, this imperative, to worship Archa and do everything else which is connected with this. Tavat, up to the point. Ishvaram mam svakarma krit. To worship me as Ishvara. And at the same time to do karma, svakarma krit, to perform my own duty. Yavan naveda svahridi sarva bhuteshva vastitam. Until the point when one understands that I am present in his own heart and in the hearts of every living entity. So, of course, it doesn't mean that when you understand that the Lord is present in your heart and the heart of every other living entity, you stop worshipping the deity. This is not the intention of the word, of this verse. The intention of this verse is that you perform your devotional service together with svakarma or swadharma. You perform your own duty according to the system of Varnashrama, or as Prabhupada explains here, or basically you perform your duty in the society together with your transcendental duties. So that's a very important point. Basically, what Lord Kapila Dev recommends here is Karma Mishra Bhakti. And when we see the recommendation of Lord Krishna in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, it's also Karma Mishra Bhakti. Lord Krishna, and when we see the instructions of Narada Muni in the 6th chapter of first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, we see again he recommends Karma Mishra Bhakti as the beginning stage of bhakti. He doesn't recommend the pure devotional service in the beginning. Why? Because Karma Mishra Bhakti helps us to control the offenses, the offensive tendencies. If we are in the society, we live in the society, and we follow the rules of the society, and we can see, when devotees become fanatical or overly enthusiastic, overly zealous in the beginning, and they are not really trained, they not really understand that the Lord is present in every living entity, they start committing offenses. This is the progression which we can see initially in the beginning, in the first days or months of devotional service. Everyone is so enthusiastic and so happy and everything because they feel so much bliss about chanting Bhagavad Gita, association with devotees. But then, offenses take precedence, take over their consciousness, and the bliss vanishes. And it becomes just routine sort of engagement. Because they are overzealous, they tend to commit offenses against other people, especially those people who are near them. I remember once I was speaking with the father of one very young lady devotee. She became devotee, she became very fanatical as usually. And the father came to me, and father was very sad, and he said, she doesn't eat meat, she doesn't eat fish, but she eats me. Better she would eat me than not eat me. So that's what happens. Therefore, swakarma krit, it is said here. You perform your duty in the society, you be normal. Lord Chaitanya says this to Raghunath Das Goswami, when Raghunath Das Goswami was not Raghunath Das Goswami, but was just Raghunath. And when Raghunath came to him, being young, Raghunath, who was always trying to run away from home, he said, don't be crazy. Stay home, do your duties, and perform natural detachment. Not this artificial detachment, which will force you to commit offenses against other living entities. Yeah, markata vairagya. Premature detachment, markata vairagya, is actually the driving force behind the offenses which neophyte devotees commit, unfortunately. That's how it works. Therefore, the stress is given in the beginning on this karma mishra bhakti. And if we see Varnashrama society, what is the main point of Varnashrama society? The main point of Varnashrama society is to feed others and to respect others. How the husband should respect the wife, how the wife should respect the husband, how the children should respect their parents, how we should respect brahmanas, how we should respect cows, how we should respect trees, how we should respect rivers, how we should respect everything. Some people, the other day we had the discussion about Varnashrama, how to establish Varnashrama. Varnashrama is nothing but establishing respect within our heart. If the respect is established within our heart, the Varnashrama system is established. If the respect is not, I see all this, sometimes these proponents of Varnashrama, they're so offensive. They're offensive of everyone. How is that? They're destroying the very foundation of Varnashrama. They become, it's completely opposite. Varnashrama means respect. And therefore, Varnashrama makes one humble. Swakarma krit makes one humble. Swakarma krit makes one disciplined. This is two qualities which the performance of one's duty help to develop: discipline and respect, humility. And when the person becomes disciplined and humble, then the devotional service which he performs becomes very effective. Isn't it? Because, that's what it is. That's what we're supposed to do. Therefore, this provision is there. Therefore, the Lord stresses. In the beginning, before doing anything else, you worship the deity, you perform your devotional service together with the performing of your own prescribed duties. Yes. Yes. And Prabhupada says this, it is not that one who has become a devotee of the Lord, who engages in devotional service, should give up his prescribed duties. No one should be lazy under the plea of devotional service. Because sometimes under the plea of detachment and devotional service, we just hide our laziness, nothing else. One has to execute devotional service according to his prescribed duties. And basically to develop certain qualities which are conducive for our bhakti. And otherwise, the power of bhakti will be blocked. Yes?
Krishna Maharaj, you told that we should not offend or hurt any living entity. And when we come to devotional service, we are very over-enthusiastic. And then unintentionally we are displeasing parents, hurting them. Yes, this is true. But another thing that when we want to dedicate our life for the preaching mission, then there is a tug of war with parents, and then parents also become so much aggressive also. And then sometimes some devotees they run away from home. Then parents become more aggressive, and they go and complain to police. They also come and harass devotees. But these things happen because parents, if we say to parents, I want to dedicate my life in preaching mission, they don't agree ever. And they have their own plans, they impose their plans.
Yes.
So how to join full time?
Without being offensive. It's almost impossible. But at least be nice to them. Send them some prasadam regularly. In the course of time, if you're nice to them, if you really, call them and, they become somewhat peaceful. In the beginning it may be, but still you have to behave properly, you have to behave respectfully, but, not at the cost of betraying your own callings, which are there within your heart. But still we have to be very, polite and grateful to them. And if we behave properly, miracles can happen. I see it again and again and again when people come to me and, tell their stories. I always ask how your parents towards you. They said, usually what they say, usually the answer to this question, now better. So, and for me it's a good indication that they behave properly, so it improves over the course of time.
Sometimes we introduce them to other parents whose sons are devotee.
Yeah.
Two children are devotee.
Yeah. But there are different ways and strategies, but of course, parents can be irrational. That's also true. Verse number 26. Atmanascha parasyapi yah karot antarodaram tasya bhinnadarsi mrityur vidhate bhayam ulbanam. As a blazing fire of death, I cause great fear to whoever makes the least discrimination between himself and other living entities because of a differential outlook. So, very interesting. The Lord Kapila is still angry. He was angry, in angry mood. He gave the solution, but his anger didn't subside yet. And he gives the final warning to us by saying that atmanascha parasya pi, if you make yah karoti antar udaram. This word udaram is very important in this word verse. Antar the others, udaram means belly. So that's one translation or possible interpretation of this word. Another interpretation is ud and aram, not udaram. Udaram means belly, but you can also cut or divide this word udaram to ut and aram. Ut means antar is difference, and if you divide this udaram to ut and aram, then aram means minute, very little, and ut means the least or something like this. Anyway, this is how Prabhupada translates. If you make even the slightest difference between yourself and others, that's one translation. And another translation of this verse is, if you make the difference between your belly and the belly of other people, which basically means if you don't feel what they feel, if you're not capable of feeling, if they're hungry, you should feel their hunger. If they see that they're hungry, you should feed them. So the one interpretation of this verse is that not making difference between your belly and the bellies of others is that you should take care of the bellies of others before you take care of the belly of yourself. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation, you should not, to the smallest extent, to the very minute extent, make a difference between yourself and others. Understanding that we are all parts of the complete whole, that we are all part of the Lord. But usually this verse is translated as you should feed other people. Like Rantidev. The example of Rantidev in the 9th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam is about this. Why Rantidev is glorified. He was hungry. He was fasting for how many days? 40 days? 48 days. For 48 days he didn't eat anything. And then a chandala came. And what he did? He gave him food. His food and the food of his family, and then, the dogs came with the chandala, and he fed the dogs. Why? Because he didn't feel the difference. If he's hungry, I give him the food as if I put the food in my own stomach. And of course, it's a very difficult attitude, but Lord Kapila-dev, what he wants to say actually here, tasya bina drishom rityur vindate bhaya mulbanam. And he will say this, no, he will not say this. No, he will not say this. But basically, Jiva Goswami, he says that somebody who feeds others, he will be free from the fear of death. Here, it's an opposite statement, or the statement which is derived from this statement. Here, Lord Kapila-dev says, if you don't feed others, you will always be afraid of death. You will always be fearful of death, because you are so much concerned about yourself. But if you change this attitude, and if you start feeding others very generously, then the fear of death will vanish from your consciousness. We can see, that's why I said this is such an important item or, element of Vedic culture. And like in other sampradayas, this feeding of sadhus is even, most important practice. If you see the Ramanandi sadhus, what they do, what is their sadhana? They feed other sadhus. Like in Govardhan, this Roti Wala Baba. Roti Wala Baba, he always, that's his sadhana. Day and night, he only makes rotis and feeds sadhus. And that's exactly what Lord Kapila Dev says. No distinction between your belly and the belly of others. Feed other people. Or as Prabhupada translates, which is also very proper, don't make any distinction with others. Take care of other people. Be sensitive to the needs of other people, and everything will be okay. So that's Varnashrama. You feed others and you respect others. And this is what I wanted to say. It's very interesting what Srila Jiva Goswami says in Bhakti Sandarbha about this. Oh no, sorry. If I find it. Yes, it must be here. Yes, very interesting what he says. Actually, it's in connection with the next verse, so I will read it in connection with the next verse. So let's read the next verse, if you're ready. 27, verse number 27. Adhamam sarvabhuteshu bhutatmanam kritalayam archayet danamanabhyam maitriyabhinena chakshusha. So Kapila Dev makes the conclusion, atha, therefore, mam sarva bhuteshu, you have to understand that I am in all living entities, bhutatmanam kritalayam, that I am, therefore, though through charitable gifts and attention, as well as through friendly behavior and by viewing all to be alike, one should satisfy me who abide in all creatures as their very self. Bhutatmanam, I am the Atma of every living entities in all the living entities. You have to, again, educate yourself, learn how to see and relate with other living entities as the adhishtan, the sitting place of the Lord. Archayet, you should worship me and worship them. And here Prabhupada, very interestingly, said, he doesn't translate Archayet, worship. Before that, he was translating very consistently this Archayet, you should worship, or doing worship. Here he translates, you should please me. How to please me? By dana, giving something, mana, giving respect, dana mana bhyam, and maitriya, by being friendly, and abhinena chakshusha, by looking at others with the samadarshi, with the attitude of, that we're all one family, we're all the same, we're all similar to each other, we all have the same nature. So that's how we can please the Lord. That's the conclusion of this whole section. What to do with our offenses? We have to continue worshipping the Lord by dan, man, maitriya, and abhinena chakshusha. These four items which we have to remember. Dan, compassion. we give something, give the gifts. Then those who are lower than us, can we give dan to Guru? Sometimes somebody says, I want to give you donation. Donation means dan. Can we give donation to Guru? No. You cannot give donation to Guru, because donation you can only give to somebody who is lower than you. When we give something to Guru, it's called pranami. Pranami means, pranami. It's not donation. No, but not. It's not. No. You cannot call it done. It's not done. Pranami is the proper word. Pranami means pranami. You offer yourself by doing this. So therefore, for superior, you can only do man, respect. For those who are lower than you, you do dan. For those who are on the same level, you do what? Maitreya. And then abhinena chakshusha, samadrishti, you try to feel for others. Samadrishti means, it's not the samadrishti, samadarshinaha, which is there in Bhagavad Gita, samadarshinaha. Samadarshinaha is different, which will be explained from the next verse onwards, that we see every living beings as different, but at the same time as equal. This abhinena chakshusha is very important because it can be translated maitreya abhinena chakshusha. It can be divided as maitreya bhinena chakshusha and maitreya abhinena chakshusha. So the two instructions simultaneously is given by Kapila Dev in this verse. One is to look at all living entities as equal, and another one, look at all living entities as different, because they are simultaneously equal and different. Mayavadis say everyone is equal. If we go to America, everyone is equal. But Mr. Trump is not equal, but everyone else is still equal. If we go to the West, democratic country, nirvishesha shunyavadi, everyone is equal. If we go to the, very hierarchical society in the East, which is still there to a certain extent, everyone is different. Vaishnava outlook, everyone is equal and different at the same time. Both points of view are wrong. Both points of view actually create harm. So we have to create a certain or develop certain kind of vision, which is the vision of love. This Bheda Tattva, it's a vision of love. Bheda Darshan, philosophy of Achintya Bheda is the philosophy of love. And the love is the ability to see everyone as equal and everyone is different simultaneously. Not just everyone is different and not just everyone is equal. This is what actually Kapila Dev is prescribing here. This Bheda Darshan. Therefore he says, abhinena chakshusha or bhinena chakshusha at the same time. So what else is important about this verse? Very important. And Prabhupada very beautifully explains man and dan. Man indicates superior, dan indicates one who gives charity or compassionate towards inferior. And he says, anyway, we give in charity to a person who is inferior in his material or economic condition. Charity is not given to a rich man. You cannot give. So, anyway, Prabhupada explains this. Compassion and friendliness do not necessitate falsely elevating someone to exalted position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not everyone is equal. We should not at the same time misunderstand that the super soul is situated in the heart of an animal like a hawk, and the super soul situated in the heart of learning Brahmana are different. The super soul of all living entities is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. By his omnipotency, he can live everywhere and he can create his Vaikuntha situation everywhere. The Lord is there in Vaikuntha. That is his inconceivable potency, and Prabhupada ends the purport with a very hilarious statement. Therefore, when Narayana is living in the heart of a hawk, he does not become a hog Narayana. That's, Prabhupada is referring to Daridra Narayana. So he doesn't become hog Narayana. He's always Narayana. But he's unaffected by the body of the hawk. So this Beda, Prabhupada is explaining again in the purport. But one very important point Srila Jiva Goswami makes in this regard. He says, Athamam sarvabhuteshu bhutatmanam kritalayam. If we learn how to see everyone as the adhishtan or sitting place of the Lord, Atratu tat adhishtanaka bhagavatu pasanam eva vindyate. We relate to others always remembering that the Lord is sitting there, and therefore we offer respect to them. And then he says, Tat cha anyatra jatiti raga dvesa vishleshartham iti gyeyam. Why do we do this? Please listen, because this is a very beautiful conclusion of the whole section. Why this should be done? Because by doing this, raga dvesa vishlesha artham. We're doing this to diminish the innate propensity which is there for raga and dvesa, for attachment and hatred. If we develop respectful attitude toward other living entities, then the tendency for raga and dvesa within our heart will diminish. If there is no respect towards other living entities, we will either relate with other living entities with attachment, raga, or with dvesa, with hatred. We will divide enemies and friends. That will be our relationship. But how to get rid of raga and dvesa, of this duality, which is actually, according to Lord Krishna, keeps us in this world. Ichhadvesha samuthina dvandva mohena bharata. Sargayanti parantapa. From our birth in this material world, we are in this dual consciousness, raga and dvesa. How to get rid of raga and dvesa? There is only one way: to develop respect. To understand that the Lord is present in every living entity, and to adore and worship every living entity as the sitting place of the Lord. In this way, we will get rid of the duality and develop non-dual consciousness, which will elevate us to the spiritual world. So that's a very important conclusion and very important little statement by Srila Jiva Goswami. Raga dvesha vishleshartham. To make raga and dvesa more slack, not so prominent and not so strong. Okay, so from the next verse, there will be series of verses which Charles Darwin would love. Because it's the description of the evolutionary system or evolutionary theory according to the Bhagavatam, according to Kapila Dev. This is the, Kapila Dev is actually explaining Sankhya, and Sankhya is an alternative to the modern science. And the very prominent part of modern science is the evolutionary theory. of Charles Darwin. So the description of Sankhya by Kapiladev would not be complete without his version of evolutionary theory, how the evolution takes place in reality, not this imaginary evolution of the bodies, which is, by the way, not confirmed. But evolution is there and hierarchy is there, but that's the evolution of consciousness. And when we see the evolution of bodies, it's just the gross manifestation of more subtle evolution, which is real, which takes place, the evolution of consciousness. And that's what Kapiladev will speak about in the 6.5 verses, from the verse number 28 to verse number 33. So there is, we can read verse by verse, or we can read them all. Let's read verse by verse because it's difficult. Although, I mean, it's very simple. We will just go through these verses very quickly. Jiva Shrestha Vijnanam. Sorry. Jiva Shrestha Ajivanam. Tatah prana britah shubhe. Tatah sachitah pravarash. Tataschendriya vrittaya. So, jiva, or somebody who has life, shrestha hya jivanam, is better than somebody who doesn't have life. So, and then tatah, even better than just jiva, prana britah, those who have prana, living force inside. Tatah Satchita, those who have consciousness, they pravaras. Tatah, even better than those who have consciousness, cha indriya vrittaya. Of course, Srila Prabhupada, following the commentators, he translates it in a very specific way. So let's read the translation, which includes the explanation. Living entities are superior to inanimate objects, O Blessed Mother. And among them, living entities who display life symptoms are better. Animals with developed consciousness are better than them. And better still are those who have developed sense perception. And Prabhupada explains that, that there are different grades of living entity, and, basically, what it means, this whole section, I didn't mention it, perhaps I should say a few words. This whole section teaches us how to respect every living entity according to the level of the development of consciousness which they have. Because in the previous verse, it is said that you have relate differently with different living entities. Those who are inferior, you have to be compassionate to them. Those who are superior, you have to give respect. And those who are equal, you have to be friendly. So here, Kapiladev is explaining the hierarchy of the living entities so that you can understand, oh, here I am, and everyone mentioned before is below me, and everyone mentioned after that is higher than me. So this is basically the scale which Kapiladev gives for you to understand, here I am, and what should be my attitude towards other types of living entities. So he says that even inanimate objects, there is some respect should be given there. Like we can see that, musicians, Vedic musicians, they worship their musical instruments, and before starting, and they're not just using it, they're just showing respect. The warriors, they worship their weapons. The taxi drivers, they worship their cars. They do puja to the cars. If you go to the field, you will see tractors with garlands. And the puja being done to them. So we have to respect them as well. It's not just matter. It's also energy of the Lord. And we have to train ourselves in this respectful attitude. But of course, those who have living force, they're better. But Prabhupada very interestingly and also humorously describes, he says, yes, the super soul is in everyone's heart. For example, a tiger is a living entity, part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Supreme Lord is living in the heart of the tiger as the super soul. But does this mean that we have to treat the tiger in a friendly manner? Oh, brother tiger. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. We all one family. And Prabhupada says, be normal. Of course, everyone is equal, but still don't lose your discrimination. Discrimination should go hand by hand. And, prasadam is universal. Give prasadam to the tiger. And Prabhupada explains that at the end of the purport, how the traditional commentators of these verses, they explain these different grades according to Mahabharata. He says the jiva is there even in a stone. Experience shows that some hills and mountains grow. This is due to the presence of the soul within that stone. Please don't say this to the scientists. They will never be able to appreciate the depths of your understanding of the evolution. But above that, the next manifestation of living condition is development of consciousness, and the next manifestation is development of sense perception. And Prabhupada says that the first living entities who have sense perception is the trees. According to Mahabharata, trees have sense perception. They have indriyas. We know by experience that trees can see. Sometimes in its growth, a large tree changes its course of development to avoid some hindrances. This is how the trees manifest their seeing capacity. This means that tree can see, and according to Mahabharata, the tree can smell, and this indicates the development of sense perception. And in the next verse it says, Tatrapi sparsha vedibhyah, but better than those who have sense perception are those who have sparsha, the sense of touch. And actually, traditional commentator says that the sense of touch is there in the plants. Some plants, you touch them and they move. They close the leaves. So not all the trees are equal. Those trees who can do this trick, they're higher. They're more intelligent trees. Other trees, they can only see. These trees can, have the sense of touch. That's what is said there. Okay, let's read this. Tatrapi sparsha vedibhyah pravara rasa vedina tebhyo gandha vidah shreshtas tatah shabda vido varaha. So, better than just sense perception, those who have sense of touch, develop sense of touch, like these trees. Better than them, rasa vedinah, those who can distinguish rasa, the taste. And Prabhupada says this is the fishes. Fishes, they distinguish taste. They have, this is the manifestation of higher development of the consciousness. Higher than that, gandha vidah, those who have the sense of smell, gandha. They're better than those who only have, because fish don't have gandha, the indriya of the smell, they only have taste. But better than those who have smell, and Prabhupada says that the snakes, they are of this, Shabdavida. Snakes are Shabdavida. They have the sense of hearing. They are better. And he says, snake at night he can find the frog because of the croaking of the frog. So the snakes are more developed. The insects are more developed than fish because insects have the sense of smell, and reptiles, they are more developed than insects because they have the sense of hearing. The insects, they don't have the sense of hearing. So next verse, Rupa bheda vidastatra tatas cho bhayato dataha tesam bahupadah shreshtas chatuspadas tato dvipat. So better than those who have the sense of hearing, rupa bheda vidas, those who can distinguish rupa, the forms. They're even better, their consciousness is even better than those who have the hearing capacity. Better than them, cho ubhayatah, those who have jaws or teeth. Because, so somehow or other the presence of the teeth is a sign of higher development of the consciousness on a certain level. And then better than them is bahupadah. Bahupadah means many-legged. Those who have many legs, they're better. And better than many-legged, those who have chatupada, 4 legs. And better than those who have dvipat. So many-legged animals is less, 4 legs is better. Monkeys are in between, because sometimes they have 2, sometimes they have 4. So Darwin is right in this regard. They're intermediate form. But then there is two-legged animals, 2-legged animals. The animals with 2 legs, that's us. Congratulations. So everybody else deserves our compassion. Everybody else is supposed to be treated by us with compassion, including the inanimate living entities with some sort of respect. That's how we will get rid of this raga and dvesa. Otherwise, the raga and dvesa will only be reinforced or developed. Okay, let's go into the evolution of 2-legged animals. Tato varnascha chatvaras tesham brahmana uttamaha brahmanesh api vedagyo hyartagyo vyadikashtataha. So among those who are 2-legged animals, among human beings, those who divide themselves into varnas, or in other words, those who follow the system of varnashrama, or those who actually know their nature. What is the difference between the system of varnashrama and the quote-unquote modern civilized society is that people in the modern civilized society, they're completely bewildered about their nature. They don't know their propensities. They don't know who they are, what they are meant for, and they always do some sort of chaotic work, not according to their... why Varnashrama system is better? Because the consciousness is developed to the point when people understand their nature. In the modern society, people, the consciousness is so low that they don't understand what they are supposed to do, what they will bring them satisfaction. They do something else, something which pays more, something which brings some more material benefit. They don't understand how important it is to work according to our abilities and capacities. So those who are in the Varnas, in the society, in a proper society system, they are better. And among those, Tesham Brahmana Uttamah, the highest is who? Brahmana. Brahmana is the highest. Brahmaneshu Api Vedagyo. Among the Brahmanas, the best is who? Vedagyo, those who know Veda. Hyartagyo Bhyadigastataha. But even better than those who know the meaning of the Vedas. You may know Vedas, you may learn by heart, but you don't know the meaning. So that's the next level, how the consciousness is blooming. This is the metaphor which is used by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he says that the consciousness is like the budding flower. And initially in animal species, it's Mukulita Chetana. Then Mukulita, yeah. Mukulita is, it starts budding. Yeah, but before that, Avrita Chetana, yeah. And then Mukulita Chetana, and then Vikachita. Anyway, gradually it unfolds, it starts blooming. So this is how it is. You understand your nature. Among those, the nature of the Brahmana is the highest development of consciousness. But not everyone knows the Vedas. Somebody may have some Brahminical capacity and abilities, but don't know the Vedas. But those who know the Vedas, those who know the meaning, it's very clear. Arthagyat, okay, next verse. Arthagyat samshaya cheta tatah shreyan svakarma krit mukta sangas tato bhuyan adogdha dharman atmanaha. So better than arthagya, samshaya cheta. Those who can what? Dispel the doubts. Samshaya cheta. You may know the letter of the scriptures, but at the same time you will not be able to reconcile the contradictions which are there in the scriptures. Because scriptures are so vast and there are so many contradictions. You may know the meaning, but at the same time, you're not capable of reconciling the contradictory statement or explain the logic behind this. So you have the general meaning or the general knowledge of the meaning of the Shastras, but don't have the deep knowledge of the Shastra. So that's the next stage, samshaya cheta, those who are capable of dispelling the doubts of other people. But even better than those, svakarma krit, those people who strictly follow the Brahminical duties or follow the scriptures, basically, because you may know the scriptures, you may explain the scriptures in a very logical way, but not follow the scriptures. There is a saying in the Muslim world that you do what mullah says to do, but don't do what mullah does. So, and Prabhupada says that this is the principle of Acharya. The Acharya knows the meaning, can dispel the doubts, and also follows himself very strictly, Svakarma Krit. He very diligently follows the scriptures according to them. And better than them, Mukta Sangas, Tato Bhuyan. Those who are free from material contamination, because by following the scriptures, you become free from this material contamination. But better than them, this is a very beautiful phrase, adogda dharman atmanaha. You may know the scriptures, you may follow the scriptures, you may be purified by following the scriptures, but still you will be basically adogda dharma. Dogda dharma means you're milking dharma. In other words, you're using dharma for your own benefit. You are exploiting dharma. You're basically following dharma for your selfish ends, with your selfish interest. So therefore, those who adogda dharma atmanaha, they're even better. Those who don't have this tendency to follow dharma just for some benefit. So it's basically how it's called nishkam karma. Yeah, that's the description of nishkam karma. Who executes devotional service without expectation of reward. Yeah, even better than this. And we come to the final verse of this series, but probably it's better if we do it tomorrow because it's already 12 o'clock and we did quite okay today. So that's it. Huh? Yeah, tomorrow we will hopefully finish the whole chapter because the last section is very simple and not complicated. So.
There is one scientist, Prabhupada quotes one scientist from India. He discovered that the plants are life.
Yeah.
So the scientists also accept what
Yeah. The scientists, they gradually come to understanding that plants have not life. Life, they agree, consciousness. Yeah. Feelings, yeah. There is a famous experiment, that they put a plant, one teacher actually brought a plant to class and said to the whole class to start abusing this plant. And all very enthusiastically started abusing this plant. You're useless, you're so ugly and this and that. And the plant withered actually. Plant died because of this, energy, negative energy, because you can feel it. Feelings are there, there's no doubt about it. And yes, some scientists understand this, but because the consciousness is usually very gross, it's difficult for them to agree to these statements. Huh? Stones? Yeah. Well, as far as I remember, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says some stones have consciousness. Because some stones, they produce something and they absorb something. Like in the mountains, some stones, they produce the shilajit, right? Or some other substances. And still, to this date, scientists don't know what is shilajit. Why shilajit is being produced. And I think Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that only some stones which are, producing something and absorb something, they have life. like, gemstones, they like this. Sometimes they are very inauspicious, like this, Kohinoor, this famous diamond. It was always bringing some misfortune to whoever possessed it. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.